Thank you. Well, hello, my friends. Good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoyed hearing the comments of the Prime Minister this morning. I was pleased he was able to pop up and see you before going on to some of his other meetings today, as well as a speech at the Chamber. I'm so delighted to be here with not only members of my cabinet, but also our partners in Indigenous communities. We've got Rebecca Schultz, Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rajan Sani, Minister of Indigenous Relations, Jason Nixon, Minister of Assisted Living and Social Services. He was part of our negotiating team. Nathan Newdorf, Minister of Affordability and Utilities. Minister Brian Jean, Minister of Energy and Minerals. And then, of course, we have Billy Morin, former chief, but he's now MP for Edmonton Northwest. Former Chief Jim Boucher of the Mackay First Nation. Chris Sankey, former councillor of Laxqualam Band in British Columbia. Dave Lamouche, President of Métis Settlements General Council. Chief George Arcan Jr. of Alexander First Nation. Chief Tony Alexis of Alexander Nakota Sioux Nation. Chief Cody Thomas of Enoch Cree Nation. Chief Kelsey Jacko of Cold Lake First Nations. We also have a friend visiting from Saskatchewan, Chief Delbert Wapas of Thunderchild First Nation, and of course Stephen Buffalo, President and CEO of the Indian Resource Council. We had a few others on the list. I'm not sure that they are here, but I'm going to see more at the Indian Resource Council meeting a little bit later today, where I'm going to go for a lunch speech. But today is a great day for the people of Alberta and for all of Canada. The last 10 years have been an extremely difficult time for hundreds of thousands of Albertans and their families that directly or indirectly rely on and make their living from a strong and vibrant and growing Alberta oil and gas sector. These Albertans are mothers and fathers and young people working so hard to put food on the table, to pay for hockey and soccer fees, and to save for the down payment on their first home. These are also small business owners that too often have found themselves as well in their business working very hard to build due to a regulatory environment that has made it almost impossible for them to succeed. And more broadly, the last 10 years have left hundreds of thousands of Albertans skeptical and oftentimes questioning the long-term viability of our nation as we watched its deliberate phase-out of our province's most valuable asset, leaving it trapped and wasted in the vast oil sands of northern Alberta, and with it, innumerable lost investment opportunities and tens of thousands of lost jobs. These were dark times, but in those difficult circumstances, Albertans came together, as we always do, to raise our voices and use our ingenuity to find a way to overcome the challenge. We fought and won in the courts of law. We fought and won in the court of public opinion. And we fought because we had to, because that's what Albertans do. We always fight very hard for this province that we love so dearly and for its incredible people. But Albertans are also proud and loyal Canadians. We don't fight for the sake of fighting. We don't look for conflict when there's an opportunity for peace and prosperity. Albertans are happiest when we are hard at work getting things done, solving problems, creating opportunities, building our province and our country. That is when we are truly at our best. However, in order for Alberta to find its way to prosperity within a united Canada, we need the federal government to partner with us instead of fighting against us. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney and I may not always agree on everything, but we do share a few key beliefs. We both know that Canada can never reach its true potential as a global energy superpower without a strong and thriving Alberta energy sector at the center of that effort. And I am pleased to say that this Prime Minister has made it clear to me that he is willing to work with me and Alberta's government to accomplish that shared goal. And that, my friends, is something that we have not seen from a Canadian Prime Minister in over a decade. And it is my firm belief that Albertans from right across the political spectrum, whether they be staunch federal conservatives or liberals or new Democrats or something else, they expect me as their premier to partner with this federal government to seize this long-awaited opportunity for our province. I've spoken at length about the need to build more pipeline infrastructure, to export more oil to hungry Asian markets, and to diversify our customer base. I have repeatedly stated how critical it is to reform a broken regulatory environment that is scaring away investment and demoralizing our energy entrepreneurs here at home. And I have asked repeatedly for the federal government to cease their attempts to throttle our energy industry, repeal or overhaul their 9 bad laws, and work with Alberta to grow our energy sector for the benefit of the entire country. And today's agreement is the first step in accomplishing all of these critical objectives and unleashing the power and promise of Alberta's energy sector in a way never seen before in this country. This agreement means the end of the punitive oil and gas emissions cap so that our great energy producers can grow and thrive again. This agreement means the immediate suspension of the federal net zero power regulations in Alberta, which had placed our electrical grid at a very serious risk of failure and limited any hope of substantial investment in AI data centers and applications development. This agreement includes a clear path to the construction of an over 1 million barrel per day Indigenous co-owned bitumen pipeline to Asian markets so that our province and our country are no longer dependent on just one customer to buy our most valuable resource. This agreement also allows for needed adjustments to the tanker ban when the new pipeline to Asia is approved by the Major Projects Office, as well as amendments that will ensure our companies are able to advertise their environmental leadership and efforts throughout the world without a fear of penalty. And this agreement also means that Alberta will be a world leader in the development and implementation of emissions reduction infrastructure, particularly in carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Alberta has a unique opportunity to show the entire world that the solution for reducing emissions does not entail capping productivity, growth, or innovation in oil and gas development. Rather, it is to leverage the profitability of the oil and gas sector to invest in the very technologies that will revolutionize all industries in their effort to reduce emissions globally. This agreement means Alberta will work with our federal partners and the Pathways companies to commence and complete the world's largest carbon capture, utilization, and storage infrastructure project. It will also make Alberta heavy oil the lowest intensity barrel on the market and displace millions of barrels of heavier emitting fuels around the globe. This is Alberta's moment of opportunity. Our opportunity to show the nation, as well as the entire world, that resource development and emissions reduction can not only coexist, but can actually complement one another for the benefit of billions of people around the world. Alberta is willing to take on and conquer the challenge as partners with the federal government. Now, I need to be clear, the government is just, this agreement with the government is just the first step in this journey. There is much more hard work to be done. Trust must be built and earned in the partnership as we move through the next steps of this process, whether that be working with the federal government to prepare our bitumen pipeline submission for the Major Projects Office, or putting together the final elements of a carbon pricing agreement that will be implemented through the province's tier program that balances competitiveness with accountability for heavy emitters. And although I am not blind to the fact that the people of Alberta have had the rug pulled out from underneath them too many times to count over the past 10 years, I also know that a new relationship and a new beginning needs a starting point grounded in good faith. And today, I hope, is that new starting point. So I do want to thank the Prime Minister. So I do want to thank the Prime Minister as well as his team for working with my team to get this agreement to the finish line. I'd also like to thank our negotiating team, and that included Ministers Jason Nixon and Rajan Sawhney, along with my Chief of Staff, Rob Anderson, and Deputy Ministers Liam Stone and Larry Comeyer for the great work that they did on this initiative. And I'm excited, as is my government and our UCP MLAs, to roll up our sleeves and to continue the work on this remarkable opportunity for Alberta and for Canada. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions. Thank you. Thanks so much. Now, I think Sam Blackett is somewhere moderating questions. Oh, there he is.
Yes, we'll now start the media Q&A. We are tight in time today. We'll be taking one question, one follow-up per usual. Please state your name and outlet before asking your question, and we'll start off at our mic in the room. Go ahead.
All right, Heather Yurix-West from Global National. Thanks for taking my question.
Yeah.
What is your view, Premier, of the power of BC or a First Nation to veto a potential pipeline deal? The MOU talks a lot about consultation, but what happens if an agreement can't be reached?
Well, as you can see, the MOU does not contain a veto. But I think that we both recognize jointly that there is a requirement for consultation. And indeed, we believe that there's an imperative for Indigenous ownership. We created the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, and it expanded its ability to underwrite up to $3 billion worth of loan guarantees. I see British Columbia also has a similar program. The federal government has a similar program. And so Minister Sawney has already begun the engagement. She's been to Kitimat, she's been to Prince Rupert, she's been talking with BC and Alberta nations. And we know that that's hard work that needs to be done, that we will do, we intend to do, and we're looking forward to having genuine consultation and ownership. And as for Premier Eby, I spoke with him last night. And there's lots in the agreement that we can focus on together, where he is supportive of the expansion of the Trans Mountain pipeline capacity. He is supportive of interties and working with us on nuclear. He's supportive of working with us on expanding additional LNG export as well as ammonia. So may not be in agreement with everything that is in this proposal, but we're going to have trilateral talks to make sure that we can move forward on the elements in this plan.
And my follow-up, do you think this MOU will be enough to distinguish, quell any remaining separatist sentiment that may remain in Alberta?
I hope so. I mean, I had always felt that the former government of Justin Trudeau created the independence movement, and my first conversations with Prime Minister Mark Carney were that he could end it. He could take the wind out of it. Because we saw this once before. We saw that independence sentiment was very high in the early 1980s when there was the National Energy Program. But when Brian Mulroney came in and reversed that policy, it disappeared. So I would say that good policy and genuinely addressing the concerns of Albertans is always a pathway to have a good and solid relationship. And I think the Prime Minister understands that. Certainly, based on this agreement, it shows he does, and so I'm hopeful.
Thanks.
Hi, Premier Ezra Levant from Rebel News. The first deadline in the MOU, if I'm reading it right, is April, where the duty is on Alberta to jack up carbon taxes. And the last date in the MOU, if I'm reading it right, correct me if I'm not, is 2040. That's when this pipeline, that's sort of the end date. It can't be any later than that. In terms of building trust with the anti-oil liberals, they're asking Alberta to raise carbon taxes now for a promise of an oil pipeline years or even more than a decade in the future. Does that really build trust?
Well, you have to start somewhere. And one thing I would say is that we did have the Supreme Court of Canada rule on the federal government's ability to set a price on emissions. So the Supreme Court has ruled on that. It's part of the reason why we negotiated a stringency agreement that would have seen the carbon tax price go up to $170 a barrel by 2030. We've demonstrated, and I think the Prime Minister agrees, that's too high, too fast. So that's why we understand that there was always going to be a negotiation around that. We froze the carbon tax at $95, pending consultation with the industry and greater work with the Prime Minister. But remember, Alberta was the first to have an industrial carbon price. They did we implemented that in 2007. It's generated revenues that have allowed us to invest billions of dollars in new technologies, including carbon capture. So there is a commitment on the part of the industry to have a carbon price, and we did do some consultation on that. We're just glad that we have the means to manage it our way in Alberta under our TIER program, and you'll see as of April 1st, and no, that wasn't a joke. April 1st is going to be the date that we have an agreement on that front. When it comes to the building of a bitumen pipeline to Asian markets to the BC coast. Though, if you read the MOU, those two things have to happen in tandem. That we have to see the Pathways project proceeding at the same time as an agreement to build that. One is dependent on the other. I don't know that the Prime Minister would have agreed to a new bitumen pipeline without Pathways, and we wouldn't have agreed to Pathways without a new bitumen pipeline. So they are going to be staged. They are going to go on together. We've already had a meeting with Pathways about how we're going to do that. That will require a trilateral negotiation as well. But I'm very hopeful. Since we have used carbon capture technology before for enhanced oil recovery, that's another part of this announcement, is that CO2 will be able to be used for enhanced oil recovery, which should allow us to generate more revenue. So I would say that you don't always get 100% of what you want, but we addressed 7 out of the 9 bad laws that I'd put on the table to, I think, what will be the satisfaction of Albertans. And I think that this will allow us to see some substantial investments.
I mean, that's the thing about a peace deal. You have to make it with an enemy. So I suppose the fact that for a decade, his Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, it was about putting a capital strike on the oil and gas sector. Just a couple of weeks ago, he was asked about pipelines, and he said, boring. So is there anything, I mean, after a lifetime of attacking the oil patch, he was even interrogated by the U.S. Congress for an attempt to capital strike their oil companies. Is there anything the Prime Minister has said to you in private that you could share with us that would signal that his lifetime's work of attacking carbon-based fuels will somehow be put to the side? Like, I think he's just a slightly smarter version of Stephen Guilbeault. I think he hates the oil patch as his life's work. Is there anything he's said to you that make you believe that maybe he can be turned on this?
Well, I'll start by saying my joke has been that I would love for pipelines to be boring again. I would love for, no matter what party is in power, what level of government, that there wasn't sort of an overwrought response anytime anyone talked about building a pipeline. It's actually quite remarkable that we're talking about expanding uranium mines, building nuclear power plants, building new transmission lines through pristine areas, massive new mining projects, and not one of them has raised any ire on the part of any environmental group or anyone in the media, but there has been all of this ire raised around a pipeline. So I hope that we can make pipelines boring again, because it's just a way to get our product to the consumers who need it. I would say that, as you know, I was not a huge champion of carbon capture technology when I was in politics the first time. I wasn't. But I've seen with the passage of time, the investments being made and the fact that the technology works and we're getting better and better at it, and you can create a product out of it, including so that you can enhance oil recovery, I changed my mind. And so I would say that the Prime Minister, maybe in the past 10 years, it looked like wind and solar and batteries were going to be the ability to power industrial economies. I think the world discovered that's not true. With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with the instability in the Middle East, everyone is having to recalibrate and rethink that. I was recently in the Middle East, and the conversation around the table now is talking about natural gas as a foundational fuel, not a transition fuel. So I think that demonstrates that there is a global understanding of how important it is to have reliable electricity. And so I have to just give the Prime Minister credit for perhaps he's recalibrating his own thinking on this. It certainly seems to be in the agreement that we signed, but we will trust, but we will verify. We will make sure that he lives up to the commitments in this agreement that we had, and we have to proceed somewhere with a measure of good faith. I can tell you 100% that the former Prime Minister would never have moved this far on these issues. We tried for 3 years, we got nowhere. And in my very first meeting with the Prime Minister, I said to him, you know, the way that we can get to an agreement is just orienting around a 2050 target. Our industry is there. We think it's achievable with technology. And you'll see in the context of this MOU that the interim targets are gone. And so that's what we're going to move forward on. And we'll see as we meet these milestones whether I'm correct or whether your skepticism is correct.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ezra. We're going to take one more from the room, then take 1 or 2 from the phones before coming back to the room. Go ahead.
Hi, Premier. Laura Osmond with The Logic. When it comes to trying to find a proponent for this pipeline, is this MOU enough to start bringing private investment on board? Or in your conversations with potential proponents, are they looking to get farther down the line? At what point do you think you might be able to announce some kind of proponent taking over?
Well, I think that the fact that this room filled up with, 24 hours notice gives you an idea of the enthusiasm that we have in the sectors that make billion-dollar investment decisions. And many of the people in this room have been holding on to capital or redeploying it elsewhere. So I think that's going to cause a lot of really interesting conversations now that they've seen the structure of this agreement. We'll know in the coming weeks and months, generally speaking, about final investment decisions. But I've been encouraged to see that even with the announcement in the budget that they were looking at not implementing the emissions cap, which we confirmed today, you've seen Enbridge talk about 400,000 barrels a day on their main line that they want to expand. TMX has talked about an additional 400,000 barrels per day that they want to optimize. South Bow, using the old Keystone assets, have talked about a 650,000 barrel a day project. I've been in touch, the folks from the St. Lawrence Seaway Group have been in touch with me saying, can we get oil to Thunder Bay so that we can get it out on tankers to markets in Europe. We have oil by rail projects being talked about going all the way to Nova Scotia and being exported out of Sydney. I'm watching with great interest as Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew negotiates an economic corridor co-owned with First Nations, and whether there's an opportunity for us to also be able to have a pipeline go there and also reach European markets. Doug Ford and I signed an MOU about perhaps having a spur line going to James Bay with a similar kind of model. So all of those projects are now going to be able to go ahead because there is not going to be an emissions cap on our production. And in the meantime, because I think our biggest opportunity is a new market, a new pipeline to get to markets in Asia, I'll be spending a lot of time working on that. So we have, I think, 20 individuals at our table giving us advice from all of the big pipeline companies who have over 100 years, I think, of expertise, more than that, I think, combined in doing these kinds of big projects. And in the end, you'll see the MOU says that we want a private proponent to build that. I don't think it would be success if we have to have the federal government, once again, have to pay for an overpriced, expensive pipeline. I think we want to create the conditions so that the private sector has confidence and will build it. So that's what we're working towards. We knew we needed to get through these first few phases, but I'm pretty confident with the people we have at the table that one or a consortium of them, once we establish that it is on the major projects list, will be willing to take this on.
You have mentioned that it's a long road. You still have to build trust. You've had the rug pulled out from you before. Pipeline aside, is the changes to the emissions cap and the clean energy regulations enough, do you think, to increase oil production in Alberta and improve the investment environment here?
Well, I think almost certainly. The problem with the emissions cap is that, especially with the interim targets of 2030 and 2035, the only way to achieve that, because we wouldn't have been able to build the carbon capture utilization and storage or the fuel variety like nuclear, or have advanced direct air capture. The only way to achieve them would be to shut in production. And it wasn't just us saying that. There's several different reports that went out saying as much as 2 million barrels a day would have to be shut in by 2035. So we now have a longer time horizon to address the issues of emissions. We've a big change is that we're going to have a look at heavy oil on the basis of emissions intensity compared to other heavy barrels around the world. That is also, I think, going to be a major confidence booster. And then on the other side, when I was recently in the Middle East, I talked to a company, Taka, that had talked about wanting to do an AI data center. They were going to build their own natural gas power, but they told me because of the clean electricity regs, which meant they'd have to turn it off in 2035, they didn't even get started. And I have to wonder how many other projects of that nature didn't even get started because of the clean electricity regs. So now that there's an immediate suspension of that, there will, of course, be pending our agreement on what the tier pricing will be. But there has always been a carbon price on heavy emitters, and that included in the electricity sector. So I think we'll be able to give that injection of confidence. I guess we'll know in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. We're going to go to the phones for one and then come back to the room for our last one. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
Your first caller comes from the line of Ryan Humilty from Toronto Star. Your line is now open.
Yeah, good afternoon, Premier. Thanks for taking the question. The MOU sets out obligations on both Alberta and the government. If the government of Canada lives up to its obligations, but a private proponent doesn't emerge for the bitumen pipeline, is Alberta still committed to increasing its carbon price and the other commitments that you've made on pathways and other projects?
Well, as I said, we have always had a carbon price. We were the first to put one in place in 2007. We have just recently made changes to TIER to allow those revenues to be recycled back to companies so that they can invest in carbon capture technology. We have put in place our ACIP program, which is our carbon capture incentive program, where we rebate 12% of the cost of any investment in carbon capture. We've got a major center in central Alberta where 10 different direct air capture projects are underway. We have signed agreements not only with the federal government, but with our fellow premiers on looking at how we would add nuclear to the grid. So all of those things are underway. All of those things will continue to go. And what we're very hopeful is that as we stage gate the development of a bitumen pipeline, we'll also do the same thing with the Pathways project. And then we'll be able to have the largest carbon capture project in the world, which I think will also be another major export opportunity for us. So I would say that we showed our commitment when we released our energy development and emissions reduction plan in April of 2023. And most of the elements that we announced then, you'll see, are enshrined in this agreement that we have today.
And then the coastal First Nations, especially, but certainly BC as well, have said so far publicly, they said they really don't support this pipeline. It seems like the MOU puts bringing those people on side in your court. Can you expand upon how you intend to do that and how you intend to see that happens?
Well, I can tell you that there are some leadership in some nations that have been vocal, absolutely. But as you can see, there are some leaders of some nations that are in this room supportive as well. And that's the nuance that happens. There will be, no matter whether it's a nation or whether it's a province or whether it's a political party, there's just different opinions on things. But what this agreement shows is that we're going to work collaboratively to work towards a bitumen pipeline to Asian markets on the West Coast. And when we arrive at a port, that will also have a tanker ban carve-out for that. So I would say that my Indigenous Relations Minister is doing tremendous work on doing the initial engagement, which will ultimately lead to a more formal consultation process. We're beginning with a spirit of goodwill, having had some success with our AIOC. I think that demonstrates credibility in having a meaningful equity ownership stake. And we've had very constructive meetings. I had a very constructive meeting you may have read with the Haisla chief and council and others yesterday, where they may not be 100% behind a bitumen pipeline, but they're excited about LNG export. They wanted us to make sure that we knew that Kitimat is a thriving port for all kinds of commodities. And so I think that that's where the relationship begins. Let's talk about areas of agreement, and then let's work through the areas of disagreement. But I think that we will find over time that there are many nations who are also interested in these kinds of projects so they can bring prosperity to their people. And that's our starting point on this.
Thank you. And if you're really quick, Premier, we might be able to squeeze in two more. Okay. And we'll go to our next to the mic.
Sheila Gunn-Reid with Rebel News. Just staying on the topic of British Columbia, the Prime Minister has said in the House of Commons just 2 days ago, we believe the government of British Columbia has to agree. Now, just now, after he left the signing with you, his press release says these projects will only be built in consultation and partnership with Indigenous rights holders and British Columbia. So what is the real strength of this MOU when you have a partner who keeps giving veto to British Columbia?
Well, you'll see in the agreement there's no mention of veto. I think that there obviously has to be trilateral discussions with British Columbia to find areas of common ground, and I think we will. And there's also clearly going to have to be a formal consultation process with Indigenous bands, and we're prepared to do all of that. What I have seen is that there have been a number of projects in British Columbia that may have started off with a lot of opposition that over time got a lot of enthusiasm. Look at all of the LNG projects down the coast. Look at Coastal GasLink. Look at the opportunity now for additional LNG projects. Look at even the Premier of British Columbia talking about expanding TMX. That was not the conversation that was happening 5 or 6 years ago. So I would say that some of it is in the proving. You have to prove that you're listening, prove that you are being genuine in the consultation, genuine in addressing the environmental and other issues that are raised. And that's what we intend to do. We intend to be involved every step of the way to make sure that we're able to bring people on board with this. But it's a process. We know it. This is the first stage of it. But having the Prime Minister agree in principle that getting 1 million additional barrels to Asian markets is a good thing for us and for Canada, I think that's a major milestone.
Now, British Columbia, however, says that they're blindsided. They say they're considering a lawsuit, which could tie up any potential private sector proposal for years. It might even act as a deterrent to a private sector pipeline proposal. Has the Prime Minister given you any assurances that he would use constitutional means, like the notwithstanding clause, to prevent a proposed project from getting bogged down in a legal quagmire for years?
Well, I don't think he needs to use the notwithstanding clause because this is federal jurisdiction. Trans-border pipelines, trans-border infrastructure, ports, those are all federal jurisdiction. And I think that British Columbia has tried to use every tool in the toolbox, I guess was the term that they used before, and failed. It was clearly affirmed by the courts that this is not British Columbia's decision to make. That being said, we understand that there's a process we have to go through. We understand that Indigenous partnership is key to that. And so we are wanting to get the project to a point where it's on the major projects list, at which point there's a 2-year window to get to approval. So we've got our work to do over the next number of months, but that's the commitment on the part of the federal government, is that once something is on the major projects list, it will have a new approach so that it can be approved in 2 years. And again, trust but verify, we're going to hold them to that.
Thank you. And yes, we have time for one last question. Just keep it quick, please, and thank you.
Hi, Premier Matt Skase with the Globe and Mail. This MOU talks about working collaboratively with companies to get CCUS built. How are you going to bring those three parties together, government, CCUS companies, and obviously there's a carbon capture incentive right now to support the project at the 12%. Are you going to change that formula at all?
So a couple of things. We have already demonstrated how we're going to support the project on our end. The 12% rebate on capital costs, that's our investment tax credit. But the recycling of the tier revenues, that's really significant because the pipeline companies in Pathways, or pardon me, the production companies in Pathways Group, they already pay, I think, $300 to $400 million in carbon tax fees through the industrial carbon tax. Having them be able to recycle those back to dedicate to this kind of project, that's our commitment. So that was a change that we made on consultation with the industry. The remaining is going to be coming from the federal government. They've got a 50% ITC. And the main thing that we were able to agree to with Ottawa is if you're going to have a project that is going to cost substantial dollars, you need to have a new revenue stream to pay for it. So if in the end the Pathways projects cost $10 to $20 billion, but they're also earning $20 billion a year for the next 20 or 30 or 40 years, that becomes a more viable project for those companies. If it's just a cost on them with no additional hope of revenue, that was what they were facing. Now that we can see these two things go together, I'm pretty confident we'll come up with a trilateral agreement where the federal government will take a part. We'll obviously allow the pipeline companies or the production companies to keep more of what they earn, and then they will also put forward a portion of the cost.
Mm-hmm. This also comes with complete carve-out for Alberta on the clean energy regs, removing greenwashing provisions. Do you feel like Alberta is a winner in these negotiations?
Well, I can tell you I had a pretty happy caucus when we talked about it yesterday. So I would say that we put on the table what it is that we wanted to achieve. And I talked about the nine bad laws. And let me just go through them so that you know why it is we're feeling like this is a win for Alberta. First of all, one of the things I wanted was no export taxes or restrictions on Alberta oil and gas. Well, we got that. A complete redo of C-69. Well, not only are we going to get that through the Major Projects Office, but we have an agreement that intra-provincial projects are going to be approved by us. And there's going to be a rewrite of that bill. Emissions cap, gone. Carbon pricing stays provincial. We've got that. The clean electricity regulation scrap. We got that. Tanker ban carve-out. We got that. The censorship of energy, we got that. That's 7 out of 9. That's not so bad. We're gonna win them in court on the declaration of plastics as toxic. We already won round 1, so we're gonna keep on going so that we win that one too. And they have realized that their net zero cars are not going to work. They've already done a 1-year reprieve on that, and I suspect that's going to also have to be significantly modified or gone. So as you can see, these are the things I put on the table and have for years. And we finally have a partner in Ottawa that has recognized that the policies are unworkable, impractical, damaging to Canada, damaging to Alberta. And I think this agreement is the first step in being able to correct 10 bad laws, or 9 bad laws over 10, I think, years where our economy was depressed. And it allows for us to make sure that we don't have a repeat over the next 10 years.
Thank you, and that'll conclude today's press conference. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.